Hello and welcome to Pittsburgh City Council's post agenda for Tuesday, January 29th, 2019. My name is Kim Clark Baskin and I'm your Deputy City Clerk. With us today, we have our sign language interpreter, Nick Miller. The following is a topic to be discussed at Roundtable by Pittsburgh City Council. An agenda item at the request of Councilwoman Erica Strasburger with a discussion on employee ownership. That concludes the topic of the day. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Good afternoon and welcome to the post-agenda hearing on employee ownership. We're joined today, I'm happy to be joined today by Councilwoman Harris and Councilman Coghill, and I know that other council members will be joining us soon. So we are here to discuss the possibility of employee ownership. What does that mean? What are the different forms it can take, and how can it empower employees to take partial or full ownership over a company that they work for? And what are the sort of economic implications for those employees and for the businesses? Those are the questions that we're here to answer today. And we have a whole panel of experts ready to tell us a little bit about that. So the way that post-agenda hearings work, we will hear from this panel of experts. There will not be public comments included in this, but certainly welcome the comments from anyone who's listening or watching at home afterwards, and to continue this conversation. I consider this to be really just the beginning of the conversation around this and educating the public around this exciting opportunity and important issue. So without further ado, I will allow Kevin McPhillips, the Executive Director of Pennsylvania Center for Employee Ownership, to kick things off with a presentation and overview of the topic. And then after that, I think we'll just start here and go down the line and allow opening remarks and introductions, after which we'll have questions and comments from council members. Sound good?
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
Okay,
great.
Thanks, Kevin. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, councilperson. Good afternoon. My name is Kevin McPhillips, as the councilperson said, and I'm the Executive Director and CEO of a relatively new Pennsylvania nonprofit organization. We're the Pennsylvania Center for Employee Ownership, and we exist for one purpose and one purpose only, which is to raise awareness about employee ownership and a dramatic program that can assist citizens here in Pittsburgh and nationwide. It's called Employee Ownership, and it has a variety of forms. And we're here today to ask you to allow us to help you. I'd like to begin by thanking the distinguished members of council for the opportunity to share a few thoughts. I wish to thank Mayor Peduto for initiating this process and commend Councilperson Strasburger for taking the critically important first step that you've done today to improve lives and decrease the wealth gap that is strangling so many of our citizens. Employee ownership can help to do that. Hirsch, if you could...
My name is Michael Miller. I go by Miller at the brewery. I'm 37 years old. I work for a New Belgium brewing company. I treat my job like it's my own business.
We believe in ownership in the United States. We believe in individual responsibility. And we want people to own the things that are core to their existence. But somehow or other, we forgot to extend that to the workplace.
My name is Carlos Crabtree. I work as a project executive at DPR Construction.
DPR Construction is a national builder focused on primarily technical market sectors.
We talked a little bit about the culture and how it would operate, that it would be innovative and different from the traditional construction company.
My name's Wade Andrews. I'm a co-owner of Namaste Solar and also a residential lead installer.
Everything is interconnected. Everything is interdependent, and that's really the approach that we bring to our business, that the community, the economy, the environment, they are all connected.
The whole thrust of science is to make the capital worker endlessly and progressively more productive.
The combination of open book management, employee ownership, and what we call high involvement culture, that's an incredibly powerful thing.
Because I'm an owner in New Belgium and there's open book management, that I'm able to do this and do a $500,000 transaction. You know, a warehouse worker, a forklift driver is doing this.
The data's in, that it's a piece of the equation that can help your company be successful. And there's a gap, in my opinion, right now between that being taught in business schools and the need for that in business schools. I just can't imagine making an argument that freedom is not the ultimate end game and empowerment. There's no way that that's not the right answer.
I don't think there's a reason to feel like you're giving up control so much as you're collaborating with your coworkers to build something that's even more.
We're not putting gold bricks in our basement. All the money is coming back into this business, and we want you guys to see where that money is going to.
I think American business has come through a serious crisis. Wages have become relatively flat. We need to think about what kinds of corporate organizations are likely to create jobs that will stay in the United States and create stable employment.
Capitalism has a problem. It's not that capitalism is wrong, but rather capitalism is right. And the problem is that there aren't enough capitalists.
There are examples where employee ownership wasn't a good fit. It's a two-way equation. The employee has to want to be empowered, have an ownership mentality.
We need to start thinking about the kids and the grandkids and what's going to happen to them if we don't do something different.
It's the security factor. It's the fact that I know my company is going to work hard for each other, and that's what's going to secure the future for myself and my family.
If everybody feels that sense of pride and responsibility, we can change the world and do great things.
Everybody then has the same data, same information, knows how to play it, all right, knows where they fit in, knows how they make a difference. But at the end of the day, can throw their fist up in the air and say, yeah, I made it, and I got it. I didn't get it alone, but I got it with everybody else.
When I think about employee ownership, I think it's about a culture of responsibility, a culture where people feel like taking care of their own future is an opportunity that is presented to them, and then it's up to them to take advantage of that opportunity.
Great. Okay. Thank you for watching that. The cities of Pennsylvania, and Pittsburgh in particular, are centrally important to the health and the well-being of not just the Commonwealth, but the nation as a whole. It's within that context that I'd like to share a couple stories with you. In 2002, the owners of a successful distribution company in a small town in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania, it's out in Susquehanna County, decided that their owners were in their 70s and it was time to sell the business. They had 40 employees who worked for them, and they considered them family. Unfortunately, they were in a very remote location, and all offers to buy the business included moving it away and laying off 40 workers. They couldn't do that. These were their neighbors. They grew up with these people. They went to the grocery store and saw them. So instead, they learned of a plan that would work. They sold the business for the same amount offered by other suitors to the 40 employees. The employees paid nothing. Fast forward 15 years to today, the business has over 200 employees, and all 40 original employees have more than enough in their accounts to retire, some with 7 figures. That's warehouse workers, truck drivers, laborers, office assistants, as well as management. In a Forbes magazine story last year, it was related that two twin sisters graduated high school in Oregon and went to work at a fast food establishment. After 1 year, they received a 5-cent raise. They knew that this was unsustainable, so they went to a local grocery store chain, and the chain was called Winco. It's basically the Aldi of the West Coast. They were seeking employment. The grocery store chain was an employee-owned company, but they only had one opening. So one sister took a job there stocking shelves on the overnight shift. The second sister took an administrative job at a law firm. They both worked hard, and they both prospered. Fast forward 23 years. The sister at the law firm regularly contributed to her 401k program, and by the age of 43, she had almost $70,000 in her account, which was very good for her young age. The sister at the grocery store, although they had a 401k, did not participate in that. Rather, she had an ESOP account. At the age of 43, still stocking shelves on the overnight shift, she had just over $1 million in her account and had contributed none of her own money. So what is this program? In 1974, Congress passed a law that is part of ERISA, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. It's called an ESOP, an Employee Stock Ownership Plan. The law says that an owner can sell some or all of their business, 20%, 40%, 100%, to their employees. The employees pay nothing, not a penny. Rather, the business takes on a loan from a bank or another lending party to pay the owner over time. The federal government and the state of Pennsylvania stand up and say, look, if you do this and you meet certain criteria, you never have to pay taxes again on your profits for whatever portion of the business is owned by the employees. The tax savings saved to pay off the note. And once the mortgage is paid, what can the company do with up to 30% more cash? Well, they can grow, and virtually no one knows about this. Some of the successful companies right here in Pittsburgh that have completed employee ownership include Voodoo Brewery, TechMet, who's here with us today, Joy Cone, Thermo Twin, Silver Star Deli, KTA Tater Engineering, who's with us today, and Carotest. Some other recognizable companies include Wawa, Sheetz, and I always ask this question, what's better, Sheetz or Wawa? I know exactly where I am in the state of Pennsylvania by that answer.
Well, you're in Pennsylvania, so.
Dansko Shoes in Chester County, Bradford White Water Heaters in Montgomery County, New Belgian Beer, King Arthur Flour, and Publix, the nation's largest supermarket chain. And yet very few people know about ESOPs, and fewer really understand them. But ESOPs are not for all businesses and are typically appropriate for organizations with 20 or more employees. So what about the millions of small businesses across the country, across the United States, that will transact over the next dozen years or so? Well, there is an alternative, and it's called a co-op, a cooperative business. Ron Gaidas, who manages the Pittsburgh Chamber of Cooperatives, is going to share a little bit more about that today. But in a cooperative conversion, the employees of, let's say, a cafe or a hardware store or a laundry service, a landscaping business, a boutique, a small business, to name just a few, collectively buy the business from the previous owners. The business is run jointly by the new members, and the profits are shared by all. This works equally well for startup businesses. Needless to say, having a stake in the place that you work brings added incentive for success, improved wages, and a real future. But no one knows about it. In private industry, the days of real pensions are largely over. As the baby boomers like myself age, we're on the cusp of a silver tsunami. With 4.5 million businesses transacting over the next 10 years, we have only 30% of those businesses with the age over 55 having a succession plan. Worse yet, 30% of employees over 55 have zero savings today. And almost 60% of those over 55 have less than $50,000. What's going to become of these people? What's the future of Social Security? I certainly don't know. How will they be cared for, and who's going to pay for it? Employee ownership offers a stark contrast. Based on the recent report on economic well-being, which is in the materials that we shared with you, by the nonprofit National Center for Employee Ownership, Employee owners have 30% higher wages, on average, 2.5 times higher retirement income, 5 times longer job tenure, and I think this is important, are 92% less likely to be laid off. Today, you're going to hear from my colleague Dan Zugel, who's a recognized national financial expert on the community value of employee ownership. If they're able to join us, they're not here right now. Matt Rachaki and Jake Volker from Voodoo Brewery would like to share a few thoughts. Oh, sure, please.
All right, I wasn't sure.
Great.
No, I wasn't noticing that. He did say he was bringing it.
Matt Rachaki has just joined us. Thank you, Matt.
There's a microphone over here.
We're going to hear from Ron Gaitis, the leader of the Pittsburgh Cooperative Community. And most importantly, we're going to hear from 2 employee owners, my colleague Charita Bush of KTA Tater and Mike Shuey, who is unable to join us but has a brief video testimony, whose lives have been changed as a result of employee ownership. Members of council, here is what employee ownership does and will do for the city. It will keep jobs and companies here. Employee-owned companies are, on average, more productive, which means job growth. This will grow the tax base. Employee ownership will contribute to retirement and correcting wealth disparity and reduce the future burden on government. Who's going to take care of these people? What we were asking is 5 things. Number 1, we asked that the council members, if you think this is a good idea, be ambassadors for this. Speak about it. Talk to others, both in government and outside. Tell them what you've learned. Number 2, we asked the council to assist us to connect with the city departments that could be important in raising awareness about employee ownership. Number 3, we asked the council to connect us to external partners of the city that can help spread the word as well. Number 4, we're asking each member to help identify the businesses in your district that will benefit from learning about employee ownership and assist us to develop educational programs in your neighborhoods. We'll provide all that's necessary. We'll do the education. You know the people, the citizens, the businesses in your districts. We don't know them. Lastly, and perhaps, no, that's good, Hershey. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, we propose the creation of a citywide task force jointly led by the City Council and the Pennsylvania Center for Employee Ownership. This task force would assemble all stakeholders from government, business, banking, nonprofit, advocacy, community development, education, and all stakeholders to develop a unified plan to increase awareness and create more employee owners to the benefit of the city and to its citizens. We are keenly aware that there are critical issues facing the city every day: education, economic growth, poverty, race relations, crime, guns, opioids, and attracting the skills needed for the future of a growing Pittsburgh, by a far margin, deserve your critical attention. But what is common about all of these problems is that the solutions are very complex. Employee ownership is low-hanging fruit. The opportunity and the solution exist today. It's just that no one knows about it. The Pennsylvania Center for Employee Ownership is a volunteer collective of current and former CEOs like myself with experience in employee ownership looking to pay it forward. We're supported by foundations such as W.K. Kellogg Foundations, universities such as Chatham right here in Pittsburgh, Rutgers, and the University of California, and by volunteer corporate and industry experts, some of whom are with us here today. Members of council, we can create a more rational economy, one that works for everyone right here in Pittsburgh. We can make Pittsburgh a vanguard city for employee ownership and a model for the rest of the country. Let's change some lives. We are here to get to work. I thank you for your kind attention, and we are at your assistance at any time.
Kevin, thank you so much for your opening remarks and educating us a little bit more about what you do and what employee ownership is. Let the record reflect that we have been joined by Councilwoman Deb Gross and Councilwoman Cale Smith. So I'll turn it over now to Ron Gaitis, and like I said, we'll work our way kind of down the line here. We'll get the presentation up and ready to go so we can see that as well. But please, take it away, Ron.
Yeah,
Thanks. I'll just say a few things about the Chamber of Co-ops. Chamber of Cooperatives. There are several cooperative businesses in the city, but they're all too busy running their business to be able to do much, to do a lot of work daily to spread the knowledge, awareness, and technical assistance for cooperatives in the city. So I would just like to say a little bit about the history of cooperatives in the city, for one. But the Chamber's the hands-on group for cooperatives in the Pittsburgh region. We're concentrating on smaller business right now, up to 10 or 15 employees, but that is a lot to handle right there. And we like our motto, which is think outside the box. We also run a small online booking platform, much like TaskRabbit or Airbnb, but the member owners of the platform are going to be benefiting from the wealth generated. I'm moving up to another. Did I hit that? Thanks. So I just hoping everybody walks out with a perspective on cooperatives in the city, how they can advance and innovate, advance the innovative and inclusive Pittsburgh economy, how they fit into existing economic development efforts, and how we advance them in Pittsburgh. So basically, a cooperative is a member-owned enterprise with social, economic, or cultural goals that's democratically owned by the members and democratically governed. That they range from Fourth River Workers Guild, which has 5 members in a small construction company based in Garfield, to the Mondragon multi-stakeholder cooperative, which is in Spain, which has 70,000 members and a $7 billion annual revenue. And cooperatives are based on these cooperative principles, which go back some way, but have been consistently modernized. But if you read through 1 through 7, you get an idea that it's all about equity, sustainability, and democracy in business, benefiting the business owner, those they do business with, and the community that hosts them. In Pittsburgh, they go back to 1819 in response to artisans facing mass production. In 1819, the Pittsburgh Manufacturers Association established itself around First and Market, right in our old industrial zone along the river. So 1819, there's a consistent establishment of cooperatives throughout our history. 1847, 1868 is notable. The Knights of Labor actually ran and owned mines, foundries from Ohio Valley all the way up to New England. So there was a lot of activity there. Some of the pioneering ones, cooperatives, were the Pencraft Farm and Redstone Knitting Mill, member-owned knitting business, and ran in the edge of the Laurel Highlands for 30 years. And if you know your economic history, each of those dates are some period of economic stress, and cooperatives are often have been successful responses to economic stress in our economic history. Here's some of the cooperatives in Pittsburgh now. They range from a 5-person group, Steel City Soils, all the way to Work Hard Pittsburgh, which owns a digital services company, its own building, developed with 30 business owning members.
See if she could adjust the angle, but there's other complications.
I can sit this way. You can see it that way.
So there are 6 main types running from worker cooperatives that of a few people, Corey, to the East End Food Cooperative that has 12,000 members. There's a full range. basically any industry. I'll show you a smorgasbord, I guess, of cooperatives throughout the country, from Associated Press, Ace Hardware, Ocean Spray, New Era Windows, even the Best Western Hotels, which does their purchasing with a cooperative. There's several hundred worker cooperatives in the U.S., and as you can see, they're distributed pretty much like the population of the nation is distributed too. This is a plot of every type of cooperative throughout the country, of all the types. Here's a listing of the industries. You can see retail, service, manufacturing, arts and media, agriculture, energy, technology, construction. Just about every industry that we've got in our economy has cooperatives in it. And this graph I'm showing you to show that, I'm going to go to the next one, but you see 10 to 49, is by far the largest number of businesses in the U.S., and what the chamber concentrates on are the smaller businesses between 10 and 15. If you get larger than that, then the employee stock ownership plan can be a much better way to go. But for smaller businesses, cooperatives are a very good option and opportunity. But main benefits that they have is there is ownership, just like the ESOP, equitable wealth. Worker owners get 12 to 15% more pay. There's more control all over working conditions, which a lot of public health research is showing that stress at work can be really bad for your health, and working conditions are very important. Democratic governance. Co-ops are only about 25% as likely to go under, and their turnover is about a third of the failure rate of conventional businesses. So, as Kevin said, the opportunity for being able to convert baby boomer-owned businesses, there's about 90,000, and some estimates go as high as 150,000 that'll be turning over in the next 15 years. And there need to be more options to just shutting them down, selling to equity firms, and things like that. So the potential is to reach about 1 million employees throughout Pennsylvania's economy to be able to convert to a cooperative or employee-owned business. They start just like most other businesses. There's either ground up with the structure or converting and acquisition. Structures are different. The gray box on the left is your typical hierarchical flow chart, organizational chart. Cooperatives are often more horizontal with less hierarchical decision making, which is what one of the things that makes everybody take more responsibility for it. Like the first image in the video we saw, it was like assume the responsibility and take the responsibility and share the wealth. Share the responsibility and share the wealth. That's tells the story. I'm not going to go into that. That's a real nice big chart of the different kinds of entity types, but the things that we work with and our clients to sort through what form they want to take. I want to switch this one up.
The PowerPoint's in here. Are the PowerPoints in this folder?
Not the PA CEOs.
I was just going to say, if anyone, we have electronic versions of Ron's presentation, which I'll send out to all of council, and anyone else who has presentations, if they send them to us, we'll get them all to council.
Thank you. We'll provide all those for you.
Great.
Okay. So cooperative resources are the people in this room who are leading the future of Pittsburgh and leading the future of the business scene in the area too. We all need greater visibility. We need business development resources as well, and technical assistance resources. It's being done in many other cities. New York, of course, is New York, and it has a huge cooperative development. They call it Co-op Academy, and there's no reason why we can't do this here, because we have the entrepreneurship programs in place, and we just need to add the dimension of cooperatives, which would get those moving. With that, there's how to reach me, and I just wanted to just go down a list of things that I'd really like to make sure you're taking home is that cooperatives are for any scale, but they're very good for the small businesses, and they're very good for businesses to be able to help businesses where there's not a lot of individual worker savings. Being able to pool resources can make them happen more easily. It fosters sustainability, inclusiveness, and equitable development. There are successful precedents, like I've showed you, and there just need to be more resources for awareness, technical assistance, and policy support. So we'd like to talk some more about that. Thanks for your time, and look forward to speaking.
Great, thank you. And I want to note, we're joined by Councilman O'Connor. It looks like he had to step out, but we've been joined by Councilman O'Connor as well.
He double booked me, so I'm going to try to come back.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
That's what he just come out for.
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Dan Zugel, like Google with a Z. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate that. I'm a senior vice president with a firm called Business Transition Advisors, Inc. We're a national business succession consulting firm that specializes in employee ownership, ESOPs in particular, in my various capacities over the last 20 years in this business, I have seen ESOPs protect jobs, increase workforce personal wealth, and transform lives compared to the alternatives, unfortunately. A stock sale to an ESOP is, by all research, statistically very economically beneficial to the community in which it is located, which is why we're here today. Often, the company is a significant contributor to the fabric of the community in terms of direct jobs, ancillary jobs, and supportive of numerous civic organizations. In contrast, I have seen the devastating effects of sales to outsiders, which I'm sure you all have as well, which include the potential loss of jobs due to consolidation, simply buying the company for their patents or other intellectual property, and the replacement of local suppliers, which could be devastating to a community. It also means the abandonment of the family's legacy, their core mission, and the shared values due to the buyer's goal of potentially flipping the business for maximum profit in 3 to 7 years, which may create even more uncertainty in that community. In my personal experience as a professional ESOP consultant, I have seen grown men and women overcome with gratitude when they find out that their owner decided to sell their stock to the ESOP and subsequently given to the employees instead of being sold to an outside buyer whose intentions are unknown and scary. At a particular employee announcement rollout meeting, which is my favorite part of the whole process, when we get to tell the employees, you're now the new owners. That's a really fun thing to do because often they're really concerned. And at this one meeting, this one gentleman rose and emotionally admitted that he was not sleeping well at night with worry that his owner would sell the company to an outsider and feared that with his age and health would be let go and undesirable to any other employer, if other employers even existed in that town. He then proceeded to thank the seller profusely and implored the younger employees to appreciate the valuable and generous gift of company stock that they were receiving and to stick around and work hard for both their own future retirement benefit and the future of the company in which they now have an equity stake. And sometimes that's the tough part. Sometimes getting the younger owners to understand, hey, look what's just been given to you. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's the folks that are at retirement age are the ones saying, boy, I wish I had this when I was 22 years old. But it's not too late. I've also seen the regret and heartache of selling shareholders who sold to outsiders, who devastated the company and the community through layoffs, closures, and consolidations. I've heard of sellers who were ashamed to be seen in the new car that they bought with their sale proceeds. You know, they don't want to drive through town because the people that were just laid off from the new buyer are sitting next to them at the church pew. In many instances, the ESOP is a better way in the right scenario. I'd end my remarks by updating you on the proposed Pennsylvania House and Pennsylvania Senate bills currently working its way through Harrisburg. One of the incentives the federal government gives sellers in order to sell their stock to an ESOP is the deferral and potential elimination of the capital gains taxes that are normally due on a sale of a business, since it's good economic and social policy. And it's supported by strange bedfellows. Bernie Sanders is one of the biggest proponents of ESOPs in the United States. Ronald Reagan was one of the biggest proponents of ESOPs in the United States. Donald Trump has done speeches on employee ownership because the common good is there. Tax incentives that encourage employers to do what's right to help the communities, and employees gaining ownership in the company that they're creating. It's a tremendous bipartisan concept, which is kind of rare these days, as we all know if we watch any TV whatsoever. Well, Pennsylvania and Arkansas are the only two states that don't honor that capital gains tax deferral and potential elimination. And so some of our legislators said, well, that's not great. That's not good. We're at a disincentive here in Pennsylvania for owners to sell their stock to an ESOP. So legislation has been promoted in the state, in which Kevin and I and others in our group are very active in supporting of mirroring, changing Pennsylvania law to mirror that federal law, so we are not at a disincentive. And we'd be more than happy to leave Arkansas as the only state in the union that doesn't reciprocate that federal law. So it has, like I said, broad bipartisan support and put us on par with the other 48 states. So that's just a little state update. Our concern here today is for the city we all love and the region that we love. ESOPs are good to keep jobs here. That's kind of the point. If the jobs stay, and if there's tax incentives of, as Kevin mentioned, of potentially not paying federal or state income tax on the profits, that leaves more money for a company to grow, to expand, to pay more wages. And quite frankly, the more people that have independent wealth through an ESOP, 2.5 times the average retirement benefit of a 401k alone, the more people that have independent wealth, that's frankly less people that federal, state, and local governments have to care for later on. And so that's kind of the intent why they encourage tax incentives and tax breaks for employees to gain ownership in the companies in which they work. Once again, thank you for having us here today. It was a personal privilege to be here. Thank you very much. I'll let the others speak, but be happy to answer any questions later that you may have. Thank you again.
Good afternoon. My name is Charita Bush, corporate trainer and proud employee owner of KTA Tater. I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk about a subject that is so near and dear to my heart, which is employee ownership. So a little background on KTA. KTA is a consulting engineering firm that focuses on quality verification and asset management. So we combine design engineering with inspection services for protective coatings, building envelopes, and steel and concrete fabrication. KTA was started by Ken Tater in his home in 1949. Fast forward to 2010, when Ken Tater Jr. sought to sell the business. He made the wise and gracious decision to sell it to the employees. That year, KTA became 70% employee-owned and 100% employee-owned 5 yeers later. Today, KTA is celebrating their 70th anniversary, and the little under 300 employees we have now have a rich future thanks to the decision of employee ownership. So we're really proud about that. I'm a City of Pittsburgh resident, and I've worked since I was 16 years old. A few years ago, I left the workforce to take care of ill parents. And once they passed on, I would emerge in the workforce with a company that not only accommodated me financially, but emotionally. It was the cultivating and healthy environment of the employee-owned company, KTA, that has me where I am today. Now, when we talk about the benefits of employee ownership, the National Center for Employee Ownership, which, by the way, they'll be hosting their annual conference here in Pittsburgh, April 8th through the 11th. Great resource for employee-owned companies. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. But the NCEO has documented some proven benefits that ESOPs have, and ESOP, Employee Stock Ownership Plan, companies tend to have greater growth and bottom line performance. Last Friday, the employees of KTA celebrated a successful 2018 year with bonuses, which is always nice. ESOPs tend to have fewer layoffs in economic downturns. We tend to earn higher compensation and, or as Kevin mentioned earlier, are far better prepared for retirement than our non-ESOP peers. When I leave KTA, not only will I walk away with the 401k that I've established, I'll also walk away with a bag of money that I contributed nothing but my hard work, which is extremely gratifying. Lastly, I had the privilege of participating on Governor Wolf's listening session for his task force on building and maintaining the middle class. And I shared some points with him that by promoting ESOPs and supporting ESOPs could support his cause that he has as well. And one of those was to include ESOPs in the preferred status certification along with women-owned, minority, and vet-owned businesses. Another one was to join with our local government and community leaders to close that skills gap that exists within our region. I believe by partnering with private companies, ESOPs, to recognize the skills that are needed in the region, they could do the training and in essence get these people to work. I mean, we want to grow, so that's a good way. In closing, I just want to say that we must preserve and support and promote employee ownership to aid in its success and sustainability. I believe by partnering with the Pennsylvania Center for Employee Ownership that it will give the city of Pittsburgh a resource for existing employee owners and a platform for establishing new ones. So that'll be good for the community and its residents. So thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for having me here. My name is Mike Vidra. I'm the president of TechMed Incorporated. TechMed is a company that does specialty chemical processing for high-performance metals and metals alloys for a whole range of different industries, requirements, and customers, both military and commercial. So TechMed was formed, or became an ESOP, I should say, in 2015, when the founder, a gentleman named Gary Reed, decided to retire. In doing that, he took the step to sell the company to his employees, to try to help his employees. And to further help these employees, he sold it at a discount. And he sold it at a discount so that it would reduce this debt payment that this new company, right, and these new employee owners would have to pay. TechMed is now 100% employee-owned. In just the 4 years since the ESOP was formed, the number of employees at TechMed has almost doubled from 23 to 42. The value of the company has more than tripled, at least by the share price. And we've expanded into a second building, another 90,000 square foot facility, to take advantage of the many new growth opportunities that we continue to have. In those 4 years, we've only had one person leave, and quite frankly, it was for an opportunity that we just couldn't match. I'm very happy for them. But no one else has left. We have very good employee retention. TechMed has been able to pay their employees above market rate. And on top of that, 20% of all the profits get paid out equally, divided evenly between the employees every year. And even on top of that, again, the higher pay structure and the profit sharing, for anyone who was there in 2013, 2 years before the ESOP started, you get to, as one of the provisions of an ESOP, you get to sort of fund shares 2 years in advance or 2 years prior. So for anyone who's been there since 2013, the lowest account balance for any of our employees is $66,000. And it's without them putting a penny in for themselves. Most of those employees have more than that. 75% of the people who were there from 2013 on have more than $100,000, again, with no contribution on their own. Our people have always, I think, been very customer focused, but another advantage of the ESOP is after that occurred, they became much more engaged even than they were. They became sort of all in. We compete mostly in the aerospace and the medical device industries. And so attention to detail is kind of very critical there, and having this full engagement, this deep engagement of the employees allows us to stand out among our competitors. The tax advantage, the ESOP corporate structure, has allowed us to put large amounts of money back into the company, mostly in the areas of research and development. We average now between 2 and 4 new patents a year, which for a company of our size, again, 42 employees, is quite significant. We are currently working on developing new processes and new technologies currently for NASA, the U.S. military, GE Aerospace, GE Additive, Textron, Titan Spine, and many, many others. We're a company, I truly believe, where people like what they do, and they like being there. Everyone's part of the team, everybody's part of the company's big picture, and very much so we grow and we succeed or fail as a team. And everyone working there has that same stake, that same part of the responsibility and the potential rewards. Kind of in closing, the financial benefits from the ESOP have enabled reinvestment and expansion to all these new technologies, which I think we're excelling in, and all these areas of continuing opportunity for the company. But that's not the largest, again, the largest benefit for us. The largest reward has been in this commitment of the employees into this growth and success of our corporation. TechPet is not just a place where they work. Rather, the work that they're doing every day is a reflection of who they are and of kind of what they're bringing to the table collectively as a company. And kind of as the president of that company, I don't know, of course, there's a better situation for continued future success. We have tremendous opportunities still on the horizon because of these patents, because of this reinvestment, because of this engagement. We have these opportunities, quite a few of them going forward, and all of us are sort of going to benefit from that. Everybody who's contributing to it is going to benefit from it. That's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
How are you? Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me speak here today. I'm a little less formal because I get to make one of the best things in the world, which is beer. And it.
Did you bring it?
Well, Corey, I mean, maybe if we stop down in my truck when we're done, okay? All right. So I get really passionate about talking about employee ownership and kind of where my company has come from and where it's gone. So our CEO couldn't be here today, and I will have to leave shortly because quarterly we have our employee owners give us pitch meetings on how they want to grow our company because they begin to see stock. So I'm on my way up to our headquarters. We're not headquartered in Pittsburgh, although we have a pub in Homestead just outside. And we have become, what we like to see ourselves as an economic force in Western Pennsylvania. Everything from direct sourcing of raw materials to 108 employees today. So I'd like to take a step back from where that is before we were in ESOP. In 2014, when I came on board as from a silent partner to a managing partner, we had 3 employees. I was the 4th. We knew at that time we were going to go through an equity shuffle from our founder. I think we heard some of those sentiments a little bit earlier. And we began to think about how could I stage my company from an equity structure to provide exponential growth. So as the 3rd or 4th employee in 2014, we transitioned to an ESOP at the end of 15 into 16 with this very calculated plan that my old professors at Pitt would have been very proud for me to put together. And now we sit on that many employees. And from, I think at that time, like a $450,000 valuation as an entire company to something over about 12 million right now. Western Europe distribution, 14 states and growing, Brazil, Southeast Asia, and all throughout Canada. I'm not telling you these statistics to boast. I'm telling you because we couldn't have done it without our employee owners. So every single employee in my company, as you've heard, has ownership, but I think what's more importantly is that they actually feel it and own it. So we own and operate pubs. We have 7 now. Little things like turning the lights off and not wasting water is extremely important. It's full circle sustainability when you really look at these type of programs to be able to brought in. But it's also an amazing way to give back, I think, to populations that are very indicative of what the city of Pittsburgh sees. So it gives wealth to populations that have never had access to it before. I hire extensively in Homestead, and again, I know that's not Pittsburgh, although you guys should think about it, just putting that out there.
My cousin's the mayor of Homestead, so
what's that?
My cousin Betty's the mayor of Homestead.
Isn't she awesome? She has been so good to me since, because I came in as an outsider, so, but she's been very, very good to us. So Anyway, putting that aside, we hire from areas that typically have had inappropriate distributions of wealth that other sections of cities or communities have had. So now I have cooks and waiters and waitresses and bartenders and canning line technicians and procurement analysts and marketing analysts that come to me and they say, hey, I don't know what this is about because I've never owned anything in my life. I've been living paycheck to paycheck since I was 17 and I dropped out of high school. Can you sit down and talk to me about this? Absolutely, all day long. If you work with me hard, is what I always tell them. You know, kind of at that position in the company, I say you're going to have something at the end of the day, and you see our company doing very well. Going to continue to do that. So it is something that we are extremely passionate about. I think, especially in Pittsburgh, there's been some recent articles that have popped out about how big of an employer the service industry is. I think that anybody that's starting a new restaurant, brewery, winery, tour company, whatever that might be, should strongly consider it, because the way that the money flops out generally in these type of businesses is it's very hard for me to pay you a living wage and still put profit on the table at the end of the day. This is a really nice way to kind of bring it full circle. I think it's important for everybody that I think we've all had buddies that want to start a restaurant or a brewery, is to mention it to them and really kind of see where that goes. So I think just in summary, on a personal level, of all things that I've had the opportunity to do professionally, it's without a doubt probably my proudest moment, is being able to look at people when we bought out our partner for a very hefty sum, that our bankers looked at us and said, wait, you're going to throw some of this back into a trust and you're going to give it to your employees? And we just said, yeah, we think we're going to do that. Huge source of pride. So if you hear any business owners ever doing that, you should pat them on the back. So thanks. And I do want to apologize if I have to head out in a few minutes. I will follow up with anybody and I feel bad. But thank you for having me here today. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you all. Before we turn it over to council members, I do want to note that we have Lindsay Powell here. Yeah, she is from the mayor's office. So we do have the mayor's office represented here as well, engaged in this issue.
For a fee.
Councilperson?
Yes.
I don't know if time permits. We have a 2-minute video.
Oh, right. You mentioned that before. So
Yeah.
let's
Persh,
see
if
the
you
video
could-
before we
if you
turn it over
could,
to council
cue
members.
that up for us. It was the one we minimized.
Anyone can't see, we have a chair here and a chair here.
How many time is it? Really 2 minutes?
The city council.
It is. It's 2 minutes.
Honorable members of the city. Honorable members.
Honorable members a couple times. I don't think he knows us very well.
I'll just share with the council. Mike Shuey is from a company called Restech in Pennsylvania. And Hirsch, I can read his comments, all right? He's employed by a company called Restech, which is a science company in central Pennsylvania. He's also he's the president of the Employee Owners Association chapter in Pennsylvania. Was planning to be here today but was unable. So I'll just share his comments. Honorable members of City Council, it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to share a little bit about Restech and what makes companies like us stand out from the typical public company. Restech headquarters are based in Bellefonte, Pennsylvania, and provide chromatography products at almost every country in the world. In turn, these products help many industries and markets make their planet a safer place to live. We have products in outer space and in labs all across the world that are assisting with nationwide epidemics like the opioid crisis. How do these products make it across the globe and into the hands of our customers? They get there from all of their dedicated and engaged employee owners like myself. My name is Mike Shuey, and I'm in customer service at Restech. I'm not a high-level executive at Restech, but I am an owner of the company. Restech is 100% employee-owned and an ESOP. Our employees make an impact on our business, our industry, and our community. Because Restech is 100% employee-owned, our employees have a vested interest in the success of the business, which in turn impacts their families and our community. Not only are our employees and their families receiving benefits of our ESOP, but the community is as well. These benefits include supporting blood drives, Relay for Life, and United Way support, and numerous other human services needs around the area that make our community a better place to live. Before we became an ESOP, our founder could have sold our company to a large corporation, but he decided to reward all of the hardworking employees and families by selling the company to us. An ESOP is a retirement plan, but it's also a highly sustainable business model that has proven to be extremely successful. Our employee owners have 2 retirement nest eggs, the typical 401k and their ESOP retirement. He has an example of a graph that shows an absolute hockey stick of the profitability of the company. Sorry, we can't show that to you. Our founder challenged us to retire as millionaires when becoming an ESOP, and we're doing just that. The biggest hurdle for businesses working on a succession plan is not knowing that this business model is out there for them and it could benefit them. Thank you for your time. Please help us bring awareness to companies that want to keep their businesses and families in the state and the community. Sincerely, Mike Shuey. I do have one last item. It's a 4-minute video. I'll ask if you'd like to see it, that shows you what it looks like when a company becomes an ESOP. Could you go, please, Hirsch, down a couple slides, please, to the NCC slide. That one right there, please.
We're all going to take over Anthony Cogill's business when you leave. That's all it is.
This is a company that we helped to convert recently.
This is a big surprise. Everybody's guessing as to what this could be, and there's some amazing theories. Anything having to do with an IPO, to a merger, to an acquisition. Somebody thought we merged with Mexico, whatever that means. So there's just crazy stuff going on. Nobody has a clue, and I cannot wait to bust it down.
No idea what's going to go on today. Nobody is giving us any clues. I'm lost for words. I don't know.
I think Kevin's going to give us all a cruise to the Bahamas or something to celebrate a banner year. Because he's that kind of guy. He cares about our well-being and everybody cares back.
I think that Kevin's going to pull the rug out from everybody, and it's probably going to be just a practical joke. Because he loves that kind of thing.
We're going to be previewing Kevin's episode of Undercover Boss here at NCC. We've been here for 4 months and no one's even noticed yet that he hasn't been in his office.
Really exciting and emotional. I've been thinking about this for like 4 years. 4 years, and you know, when I first started, I was like, wow, it's a great idea. This makes perfect sense. I'm in a really fortunate position to maybe have an impact, one way or the other, on a lot of different people in this room and your kids. And I take that responsibility pretty seriously. And I realize my job is not to be an all-star. My job is to help you succeed and be the best that you can be. And that's when I realized that's my purpose. And today, I'm here to put my money where my mouth is, because that's not just talk. I believe in the power of the team. I believe in long-term employees, people who are critical to success. I believe in putting my money where my mouth is. I believe in my stated purpose. And I believe in the purpose of the company. I believe in causing our own change. I believe in the blue dot, and I think we can get there. And I believe in sharing your voice. Employees, please stand up. If you're standing, and you're an employee of NCC, you're an owner. My emotions kicked in. It's just so awesome. It just showed me how much he really cares. And I know we got a lot of work.
Listening to everything it's like tying together a great novel, each chapter leading to the next great part of the story. I'm bound up, and thank you.
I know in my heart this is a good thing. I think people will figure it out as it goes along, and I believe in them. So I'm betting on them. That's as simple as it is.
Thank you all so much. I think that's a perfect illustration of exactly what we've been talking about. So now I'd like to open it up to council members for questions, comments, anything that you'd like to know more about. Anyone?
Teresa has to go, so why don't you
Yes,
go?
please.
Yeah. Well, I really don't have much. I just, I think it would be helpful to put some information online and on the community affairs website and stuff, so that we can share this information with our communities and with the public, and be very specific. I think with the information, if you're interested in this, contact this link or whatever. Very specific, because it gets confusing. We share so much information.
Mm-hmm.
But as I mentioned, we're all going to buy into Anthony Cogghill's business.
Did you get a price yet?
Yeah. Well, don't worry about it.
It's the lead base that
I
you
have
really
family that can
buy,
take care of
okay?
that.
Councilperson Smith, we'd be happy to share some talking points and some detail, and obviously all of
Whatever
the
you can share
testimony
with,
and the digital as well. We'll share
whatever
all
you can
that.
share with the public, I think that's helpful to the public. That's what I want to share.
Yes.
I'm curious of the negatives. I mean, we when I do post agendas, I'll be honest, I like to have both sides of everything. I like to get fact-finding information. I like to know what are the negatives, I've obviously heard all the positives, but I didn't hear any of the negatives.
Well, for ESOPs, for example, I'll say that there are cases where a business seller could get a higher price. Let's say, for example, someone was interested in buying the business, but maybe laying off a whole bunch of people, and stripping out this and stripping out that. They could perhaps offer a higher price, knowing that their profits were going to be more when they cleaned it up. So certainly the issue of that. If you don't have 20 or 25 employees, then the likelihood is that ESOPs are probably not the right thing. However, co-ops would be. So you want to look at that. There are specific tax advantages for ESOPs that don't exist for co-ops, unfortunately. That's a whole other ball of wax
and that's
we want
just
to deal with.
unfortunate, because I really think in areas where we have food deserts and areas where that's where the co-ops could really become very helpful, and they should be receiving some benefits.
We couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, the numbers work for them if they're starting up from the ground. But it's the conversion.
Right.
The tax advantage for converting to a co-op just isn't there like it is with an ESOP.
And it's important to note that employee ownership isn't an alternative, let's say, to bankruptcy. This is not an alternative to filing Chapter. This is a program to help good companies get better. That's what it is. You also probably, if you've got this going on, fighting between rank and file and management, you're probably not a good candidate for this.
So council would not be a good.
Nonsense.
No, we get along really well. I
Yeah.
just want to say that.
Other than that, there really aren't. There's a lot of misinformation out there about employee-owned companies. For example, I had a call from somebody who was inquiring about it and said, well, my lawyer told me that ESOP businesses pretty much always go out of business. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, as I shared with some of the council members, the default rates today on traditional loans are about 5%. The default rate on ESOP and co-op loans are 2 in 1,000. Wow. I mean, these are really steady organizations. Other than that, those are, you could get more money if you go another way.
There's no downside for the employees. They're not contributing a nickel, and so therefore they can't lose anything whatsoever. And some people say, well, I heard ESOPs are expensive and they're complicated. And his answer is, there is expense to it and there is complication to it. But
as there is with every business transaction.
Exactly
That's
right.
pretty much what my husband said when he married me. She's complicated and she's expensive.
But it's worth it. Exactly. So that's what we hear.
No, I didn't hear that worth it part. But anyway, I want to thank you all for sharing your information.
Well,
I look forward to sharing it with our public, and people need to do their own research and figure out whether this is something that they want to involve.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you very much for having this council.
Thank you.
And I'll be happy to work with you to get the appropriate information that we need, kind of consolidated and get it up on the website and
it'd
figure
be
out
really
best
great
ways
for the
to
Women's
share it.
Caucus to help maybe form a task force.
That's a great idea.
To work on it with the administration. And we'll even let Anthony, since he stayed for the whole agenda. So
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Okay. Thanks for the presentation. Really nice presentation. Erica told me a little bit about it before, you all came in, and yeah, it's nice and clear, and, other than the TV angle, everything is great, but, so I guess my question is this. Let me play devil's advocate, okay? I have a company, say I have 30 employees, and like you say, I understand about some other company wanting to buy it. They may move it to a different state. They may, depending on the nature of the business, you could be saving jobs for, the local employees. So you say the employees don't pay anything. Well, who pays the owner what his asking price is? So if I want $5 million for my company, we agree that's fair market value, maybe even less, just to help out the employees. Does it get paid from the tax incentive savings, or how does it get paid?
It gets paid from the company, okay? Right. And the way that works is, let's use a couple numbers. Let's say that capital gains on the sale of a business is 21%, federally. And let's say that there's another 3% state, okay? So you've got 24% of your profits going to the government, your profits going, on a regular basis to the federal government. If you sell the business to your employees, okay, let's say it's 100% sale, then in an S corporation business, the business no longer pays that 25% tax it was going to pay. The business takes a loan from a bank or another lending source to pay the owner. Okay, so the owner gets paid, and the business, which now has more cash because it's not paying the tax, uses that to pay off the note to the bank, if it's Chase or Wells Fargo, who that is. Does that answer that for you?
Well, yeah, it does. And now I guess the other part of that is this. So say, first of all, I'm a big believer in having stake in the game. Any part ownership. I always say, and I believe this still to this day, I could call any company on any phone number across America, and I can tell you if they're publicly or privately owned by the way I get treated on the phone, honestly. Right. If you have your own names on it and your own incomes, based on your performance, you just seem to perform better. So, I tend to think privately owned companies function better than publicly owned companies. Yeah. So say, for instance, I own a business. I have 15, 20 employees. We all come to the agreement of, $2 million. They're going to pay me over, I guess you have a terms of a contract, 5 years or whatever, however you all decide that. What if the company goes belly up? What if without me there, it's Great question, Councilman. And it's important to understand that, employee ownership is not a magic wand. You got to run your business. It's another business structure. Fortunately, because people have a stake in the game, they tend to do better than non-employee-owned companies. But absolutely, any business, if you're selling buggy whips, okay, and you cut a deal for an ESOP selling buggy whips, and you have no customers to sell them, your business is going to go out of business. There's no question about it. That's right. If I'm our best salesman and I'm selling the company, so when I sell the company and we come to terms, and 2 years down the road the company, just can't make the sales in order to survive, does the owner guaranteed his?
Well, couple things there. First of all, in order to conduct an ESOP, this is a program that's overseen by the U.S. Labor Department. Once you establish that you're interested in pursuing this, there's a process of a feasibility study that needs to be done. This is a deep dive into the finances of the business. You use a independent third party to do evaluation of the business, and a trustee has to be hired that has liability for this deal. So there's a trustee that is going to oversee this. The likelihood of a business that is going to go out of business in 24 months being approved for an ESOP and a loan from a bank, because a bank's going to look at this and say, should I loan money to this or not, is probably pretty slim. If we're talking in the world of hypotheticals, could that happen? It could happen. The statistics suggest that it doesn't happen. But if the business does go out of business, there's a loan there that the company has that has to be repaid to a bank. Presuming the owner has gotten paid off and they haven't done anything unseemly in the transaction, then no, the selling shareholder. Yeah, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I'm paying. That's all I care about, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and then it falls on the company then,
right?
Or
Exactly.
The employees, and if for
Yeah,
whatever reason, like you said, Kevin, I get
Yeah.
it. You know,
Yeah.
they're checked out, meaning their income source and their past performance, just like any loan, right?
And remember,
I mean,
the employee. Well, the employees have zero liability.
Right.
The employees themselves. Now, the company as an entity has a responsibility to pay off the loan, but because the funds are held within a trust for the employees have zero liability.
it's
for
the
losses.
trustee that puts the risk in.
Well, the trustee is at risk in terms of whether they did diligence in the process,
Sure.
but no one is financially responsible for it.
Yeah, there's kind of two factors there.
Okay.
One is if just the company does poorly,
Right.
and it happens.
Yeah.
Chances are ESOP companies will fare better,
Right.
because they're not paying federal or state income tax,
Sure,
so they have more
right.
cash flow to overcome those highs and lows. So if the company does get in trouble and it goes to zero, the stock value goes to zero, yeah, the employees don't have anything, but they didn't lose anything. Just, as if they did nothing at all, they would have had nothing anyway. Now, the different story is what you said. Well, if you're Picasso and you're selling Picasso's painting company and you're going to retire next year, well, first of all, that'd be factored into the value.
Right.
They'd say, what are your plans? Do we have an employment agreement? How long are you staying? Do you commit to this? And so we might not give you $2 million for that business if you're planning on retiring next year. But if you said, I commit to sticking around for 10 more years and I'm going to hire my replacement and train them everything I know, then maybe you get instead of $2 million, you get 3 or 4 or 5 million.
Right.
So that's all factored in up front.
Sure.
So we don't want you to fail. So anyway, yeah.
And I guess, so my question would be, like, who makes the decisions? What if one employee is doing fantastic and he or she deserves a big raise?
Another good question. Yeah.
You have to structure a board, I guess?
The business is run traditionally the way any other business is. Once the trust, the employee owners, own 51% of the business, they have the right to choose the board of directors. They may or may not change the board, but it's run just as it always has. There's a board of directors, and they choose a CEO, and it's a traditional management structure. Now, with a co-op, it could potentially have a different kind of management structure. It could be democratically operated. So maybe.
Yeah, and there's very efficient ways to do that. But and that's a spectrum too, from a hybrid traditional top-down structure with some concessions to a level organization where things are done by consent, or consensus. But again, the whole stake that the worker owners have is not to get bogged down in anything that's going to keep the performance of the company from being successful. So they're going to solve the problem.
Yeah, so Councilman, the actual management of the company basically doesn't change. So even though they're shareholders, they're not technically shareholders. The trust owns all the shares on their behalf. It's on behalf of their retirement benefits. So they don't get. All the employees, they don't get to vote. They don't get to accept. There are a few carve-outs. If you're looking to sell more than 80% of the total assets of the company, if there's a few things that the law actually dictates that you have to give them an actual vote on. But for day-to-day operations, it's like any other company. So they can still be fired. They're potentially kind of a part owner.
That's my question, Mike.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
So no, it doesn't. Things don't devolve into committees, or it's nothing like that. It's still the same.
Who would do the firing? The board.
No.
Traditional management structure.
Yes, I'm the president of the company. So.
Okay, so there would have to be a president of the company elected then, or put in position.
No, the president of the company is. So I'm put in position by the board. I was hired by the board, and yearly, like any other company, yearly the board is required to do a performance review for myself, and on each other. And as long as they're happy with my performance, I continue on. Basically, again, like every other company, that kind of limits the extent of the board to looking at my performance, the performance of other key executives. They approve a budget, things like that. But outside of that, outside of 4 meetings a year, the company is kind of mine to run, right, within the broad guidelines that they've provided.
So Mike was the president of the company, or was an employee of the company before it became an ESOP, and fast forward X number of years, he's still the president of the company running things the way he did before.
And for our particular company, not much has changed. For a lot of the people that are there, most of those people, whoever their manager or supervisor was, is still their manager or supervisor. Now they have more coworkers, which is a great thing. We're growing fast. They have there's new buildings, there's new processes, there's new customers. But in terms of the reporting structure, in terms of those types of things, our policy manual really didn't change at that point. It gets reviewed every 2 years like any other company.
And is there a difference in, say, you have to let somebody go? You know, you just let them go, just as a traditional company works. However, they go with a little bit extra money probably in their pocket from the savings that you put into their.
And that is the only, to answer your question, that is the only difference, is that we, of course, we have to buy the shares back, or we have to purchase those shares back from them. So we have to account for that to make sure we keep that on the books. But outside of that, outside of the financial transaction, no, there's no difference.
Yeah, in a company that has 20 employees, if only 14 want to participate for whatever reasons.
Everybody participates.
It's a Labor Department establishes a series of rules, one of which is every full-time employee must be part of the.
And there's no downside. There's no reason.
If they don't want to participate, we just fire them, right?
Well,
there's no reason not to participate. There's really,
of course,
right.
As an aside, someone can opt out. They can do that, but that's pretty rare.
Right. That's all I had, really.
Thank you.
Good question.
Those are good questions.
Thanks.
Councilwoman Gross, I know this is an issue that is of great interest to you, so.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to have so many resources all pulled together and to be able to hear the stories. And I wrote down the list of names. I'm eager to find out about companies that are employee-owned and that are co-ops in the city and in the region. I'm not sure still if there's like a master list. I mean, so some people
we can provide a list.
That would be great. Thank you. And I would love to just be able to refer people to that list so that they know. And I think it would help us spread the word, as you said. I would definitely be supportive of forming a task force on the issue. The 4 women on council 4 years ago, before Councilwoman Strasburger was here, did a task force on the issue of child care businesses in the city. I think we did that in 2015. And our question was, what are the obstacles? Are we presenting obstacles to the success of childcare businesses, right? And we kind of talked with each head of department, the fire chief, the building inspectors, to make sure that we weren't, that they were familiar with the childcare businesses, so that they weren't having, the wrong expectations, and that they could be supportive and embracing of having new business startups and expanding businesses, because we know that we just don't have enough citywide. And we learned a lot, and we were able to change some of the way that we did business as a city to be more friendly and supportive of child care operators. And I see a similar possibility here. And I'll also say at the time we did a legislative package and we were able to put some money aside that helped we're still looking for the right partner to help fund and support childcare businesses. I would prefer it as a revolving loan fund. It's a model I'm familiar with, having worked with community development financial institutions, doing micro-lending and things like that in a previous life. And then thirdly, we also set aside a small amount of money to commission a study so that we knew what the capacity was, what types of child care facilities there were, bigger ones, smaller ones, regulated ones with quality levels, where were they, which neighborhoods needed more, had more or less. And it really has helped to create a dialogue among nonprofit partners and in the industry about how we help just expand the quantity and quality of child care businesses. And I see a parallel here that would be possible. And then also we spoke. Thank you for Kevin and for Rosalie for coming into my office yesterday, because then it kind of got me thinking. Well, maybe there are industries that would benefit more from this model, like childcare, right? And I think we have seen some models in other places around home care workers, domestic care workers, things like that, and especially in the service industry, where there's such a thin profit margin. We know that wages are too low. We know that turnover is too high. We know that some of the businesses are unstable, and so that this is a real possibility for increasing that stability, but also increasing local wealth and control. And that's really something that is important to my constituents, and I think is important to us as public policy people here is that we don't want to see our local wealth decrease. I always remind myself that one definition of equity is really control and ownership, right? Just like you have equity in your house
Absolutely.
or in a business, right? And so when I look at our city neighborhoods and the neighborhoods I represent, I don't want to see amongst the residents less control and less ownership than I did last year or the year before, right? Because that means someone else, someplace else, has more control and more ownership, right? And so I'm usually thinking about it in terms of the control of actual real estate parcels, but it also applies to businesses, especially. So it's in my district I have to worry about, and I work very closely with a lot of community partners on how to lessen the impacts of both residential gentrification pressure and commercial gentrification pressure. And this looks to me like one of the tools that could be helpful. But I'll also say, again, these things are not always, places differ in terms of their demographics. And I have a lot of neighborhoods with a lot of small businesses, a lot of local family-owned businesses, long-time businesses, and we're losing them. Rest in Peace, Grocery Italiana, Bloomfield Bridge Tavern, now suddenly Meads Hotel. These are beloved institutions that are gone. The doors are shut. We saved one, and members, if you were here, I don't know if either one of you were in office, I gave a proclamation to Cranex Bicycle Shop, which was a well-loved bicycle shop on Penn Avenue, and I think it was a customer that ended up buying it, but it took a long time, and there was crowdfunding and everything because Mr. Kranick wanted to retire, right? And I don't blame the Grocery Italiana family for wanting to retire, and the Bloomfield Bridge Tavern owners for wanting to retire, and Mr. Need for wanting to retire, and I could go on. But we don't want to, the community doesn't want to lose these businesses. So I really think it can help empower our neighborhoods. And similar to the land trust model that we're using for housing to be community controlled and aligned with the mission of the community. And in Lawrenceville specifically, that's about affordable housing. So it's a community land trust formed around permanent affordable housing. That we need to find these tools, the tools like this, like these ESOPs. Just one other detail you mentioned yesterday that was really, I'm not sure if I wrote down my notes correctly. It works best for, where did I scribble it? Businesses with 25 or more employees because of the tax advantage. I think I missed that part in my notes.
Okay, sure.
If you could speak to that for a minute.
Typically, ESOPs, as one item, are ideal for businesses with 20 or 25 employees and more. The reasons are a variety. First of all, there's a federal statute that says that no one can own more than 10% of an ESOP, more than 10%. So almost by definition, you need 11. There are other federal aspects that make it difficult if the number is close to 10, because if you go under 10 for some reason, you hire someone, then you've got some issues, et cetera. So that's there. In addition, you have to be able to repay a loan over a period of time, and you want to have a certain amount of girth to your business to be able to manage the cash requirements of the business over time. So that's the reason why we say that. I mean, there are cases of ESOPs that are smaller than that, but we generally recommend something like that, which brings us to the other opportunity, which is the co-ops. And I see two sort of major issues here we're talking about. One is the opportunities with larger businesses in Pittsburgh that we don't want to go away. And the second one is, frankly, the retirement issues that you just described for smaller businesses in the neighborhoods. And I think we need sort of two strategies, and we need a real toolkit. And my colleague, Rosalie Evans, has been working very hard on developing a toolkit that can be used in the co-op space to be able to provide the kinds of resources. Let me be very candid. One of the challenges is going to be funding. Okay, and it's one thing to seek, federal funding or local funding. Why can't we rally the business interests and get them understanding how valuable it would be to have this kind of a loan? How do we leverage the current business industries that we have to try to get them involved? They're immensely successful in the ESOP world. We have organizations like PNC, who's right here. We have Wells Fargo, Chase Manhattan, Bank of America, M&T Bank, that are all volunteers with our organizations and developing ESOP practices within their banks because they're so successful. The risk levels are way down here. They don't know about co-ops today. They don't really know about them. They're all doing commercial lending. Every one of them are making $20,000, $50,000, $100 loans to people to redo a kitchen or a bathroom or a thing like that. Why can't we leverage the capabilities of the business world and bring them to the table as well? I don't think anybody's ever tried to do that. So from my perspective, and this is why I think we need the task force, we need to build a strategy twofold, for the smaller businesses within the neighborhoods, and we need the help of council to get us into the neighborhoods. Who are they? Where are they? Let us do the education. Over here is the larger organizations, the ESOPs, and we need help from council, who have the relationships with the businesses as well. But we got to build those toolkits. And, Rosalie's about halfway there, but we've still got some work to go on this. But we need to gather all the resources of the city. Who are the other stakeholders within this, whether it's government, whether it's NGO or nonprofit or community development? Who are the other stakeholders who should be part of this conversation in building the plan that's tactical? We've done a lot of talking. We've done a lot of studying. We've done a lot of analysis. I think what we want to do is get into the neighborhoods and change some lives.
Yeah, if I may, I want to give a shout out to Spirit Pittsburgh, which I'm not sure if they have a full title, which is a fabulous entertainment venue in Lawrenceville. And the owners here, Tom and Jeff, were here earlier, but they had to leave. And they've been interested in trying to find out information themselves about employee ownership. So I'm going to connect you with them. And they were happy that we did the post agenda today. So again, thank you to Councilwoman Strasburger, and thank you to all of you for coming down. I guess I'm excited, and I think that we'll be able to find some people in the community with businesses who are excited about it as well.
I'll add a third tool, which is the commercial land trust.
I know. I want one. Let's do that.
That'd be perfect for the locations
Street,
you're talking about.
Is it Dudley Street Commons, the one in Boston, which was so early? It was 20
Boston,
years ago.
Seattle's
something like
almost
that.
there
and
too.
I think they did
Minneapolis.
Businesses as well. Yeah, because it was a blighted business, Main Street.
Helpful.
Very good. Thank you.
Just one more thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the idea really is, to find out what businesses in our communities really this would benefit.
Yes.
Which, might go away if we don't step
Absolutely.
in this really. Not necessarily saying that this is better for somebody to sell their business to a co-op, but just looking for the right situation more than anything, This is I really do believe in the whole idea of it, the incentive of, making more money. To me, I've been self-employed for all my life since I've been 23 years old or so. But except now, I guess I work for the people now here. So it's, even though I do feel like we're kind of self-employed at what we do here too, because we decide our time and where we go and what we do. And we have to make customers happy, which are constituents this time. So I really do believe in the whole thing. I guess it's an idea of really finding out and what you're looking more for out of us as a council is identifying, I guess, maybe certain businesses in our communities.
Yeah, actually, a few things, and I'll share them in writing again with you. But we would like you to help us raise awareness, speak about this. Help us identify the businesses in your community, and we'll come and provide the education for that. And then, as a second thing, we believe that the creation of a task force, which is jointly led by City Council and by the Pennsylvania Center, could do all the work necessary to create that toolkit and that plan, so that when you identify the companies or the businesses within your district, we can come in with real help and not just teach them, but say, here's some help for you if you want to get started. Here's ideas on funding. Here's a series of things you have to do. Here's some software tools that'll help you run your business properly as a co-op. So that's what we're looking to do.
Right. So the person who's going to guarantee the payment for the owner who's selling, say we'll just use $5 million as a round number. Is he making money off that, right? He's the trustee or the person people stand behind the loan.
No. It's a bank. You get a loan from a bank.
So the bank is going to make their interest.
The bank makes some money.
Right.
Correct. And maybe cash flow loan will secure that loan.
Sure.
Maybe there's a personal guarantee. Maybe if it's selling 100%, there's some seller installment notes subordinate to the bank. So there's many different structures.
Right. And if I had a small business, say a pizza shop, okay, for a co-op, say you had 10 employees, what would be the first step is to say he's like, yeah, you know, I really don't have anybody to sell it to. I'd love to keep these people employed. You know, you really can't move the pizza shop to Cleveland because they don't know Angelino's Pizza in Cleveland. What would be the first step to find somebody who's going to finance the employees? Is that right?
Well, talk to the employees.
Yeah. Well, today, you know, they might go to Ron, and Ron might provide them some information and guidance. And today, it's up to the employees to get the money together, borrow it, whatever. What we're suggesting is we try to go a step further and try to put some tools, some capabilities, some resources, maybe some funding sources. For example, there's a group called the New England Cooperative Bank. This is a bank in New England that's focused on just providing microloans, essentially, to pizza shops that want to do this. We don't have that here in Pennsylvania. So how do we figure out how to do that and provide some resources? Because the toughest part's going to be the funding for the pizza shop. You know, are they going to really have the money to be able to pay the owner off day one? Probably not. So we got to help them figure out how to do that. And that's what I think the task force can do.
Yeah, so the task force will help them find the resources to give them the money to pay the owner.
Put the toolkit together, exactly.
And one of the things is to reassure the finance community that this will work.
Yes.
And so that they can go through the due diligence with a little bit different structure, but it's not like something from another planet. It's something that works in many places.
Right. Any failures that you know of? Say somebody, you know, did a co-op with Angelo's Pizza and, you know, they just weren't quite as efficient as the former owner, and now they're out of business. And
I don't have an example. I'm sure that it happens. Maybe you know, Ron might know.
And the investor takes the risk there, not the employee. The employee.
In this case, in the co-op, it is the employees taking the risk.
Employees are the investors.
Would be responsible for paying that. Okay.
Unless we can create some other process where they're not, where, you know, for example, the SBA has a new program. I won't go into too much detail. It's called the Main Street Act. It's a new federal piece of legislation which directs the SBA to guarantee loans to co-ops. Okay, so, but you got to get the loan first, and you're going to do it through a bank, and the bank is going to have
more likely it's for the bank to expend that. It's like a 7A, like the 7A
Exactly,
program.
yeah. So we want to figure out new ways for co-ops that make them more feasible. We've talked about worker co-ops, which is like the pizza shop or the housekeeping group or whatever. The truth is there's only about 500 of those nationwide today. And so what we're trying to do is figure out ways, how do we make 500,000 of those? Think about the number of small businesses. There are 1 million businesses from the mom and pop dry cleaner up to Hershey and Heinz here in Pennsylvania alone. And most of those are pizza shops. They're small businesses.
There's who knows the region of Italy where is the wealthiest of the regions? So they have their official states. It's where Bologna is headquartered, right?
Yeah.
And 80% of the GDP of the region is controlled by co-ops.
Wow. Okay.
The Reggio.
Yes,
and
thank
the
you.
second
Up
word
in the
is
northern
I don't
border.
know. Yeah, yeah, it's amazing.
Both worker and consumer.
Well, thank you. I'll just offer some closing comments unless there are any other comments or questions. But, you know, I think about the question that we're grappling with nationally, the shrinking middle class. And it seems almost too big to tackle. But as you mentioned, Kevin, and others have alluded to, this is low-hanging fruit. This is something that we can absolutely, it's successful. And the challenge that as I see it is, you can't just pass a bill and make it so. The challenge is you have to do the work, the retail and the wholesale work, to put the information out there and understand and make sure that enough people understand the benefits of it to actually take advantage of it and actually, invest in this model, from the businesses and employees themselves to the lending institutions. So that's why I agree. A task force is a great way to start this, and would be happy to work with any of my colleagues who are interested and others to identify the right people and get that started. Absolutely. And yeah, I think of friends who have put themselves through college or grad school through various jobs, and one in particular, including myself, but one in particular who was a server, was a really successful server at restaurants throughout her time in grad school. Said, I'm successful because I treated the job like I'm an entrepreneur, because she had a direct. That directly influenced how much in tip she was getting, and if she was successful at that, she was able to get a bigger tip and get people to buy dessert and whatever, et cetera, and was able to support herself in that way. And I think there are a lot of employees out there who, if they had that opportunity, if it would be a little bit of the reverse of that, they would be given the benefit of the doubt that if they are given that ownership, they would put in the work. And that's what we're seeing here, is that employees are, once they're given that responsibility and the ownership over the company and over the future success of the company, they probably were already doing a great job as employees and are just going to step up their game even more. So it's common sense to me. It's good management, and it's just an extension of that kind of a good management structure, put into real practice and monetarily benefiting those employees. So I really want to thank. Unless there are any other questions, I really want to thank all of our invited guests today. I've learned a lot. I think we have some really tangible next steps, and I'm really enthusiastic about working with council colleagues to make the task force a reality. And I want to thank everyone, all council members who were able to participate today. I think this has been a really illuminating discussion. So thank you all, and I will call this meeting to a close.